Uh, Welcome. Sorry about the little delay. So I'm also probably going to talk even faster than normal to try and catch us up, I suppose. But welcome to Sunday Night Live with Humanity First Movement. And tonight we're really excited. We're going to have a question and answer with Daniel Blackman after we go through some of our introductory stuff, who is the third very important runoff race happening in Georgia that nobody is talking about, but should be. So we'll be excited to learn more about that. So I'm just going to go through some upcoming events, a quick little update from Massachusetts and what they're doing for cash advocacy, some links and stuff. You can get to these slides and everything is clickable. So if there's something you want to get to, just go to the slides and you can click on the link and go there. We're a Humanity First movement, grew out of Andrew Yang's campaign volunteers. So we're just kind of this grassroots power that's trying to grow and push the policies that we believe in. So, we do events like this, support candidates that we think are really important and, bringing humanity first into the future of the US. So that's us. You can get involved with us by hopping onto our Slack. There is a quick orientation video you can watch that talks about some of the different working groups and what we're doing within them. You can come to one of our community events or see if there's a state chapter happening in your state. If you go to our website and click on your state, it'll take you to your state chapter if you have one, or you can come right into national. We hook you up with some people who are also around you and you can try and start a state together, start a state chapter together. Some other important links, if you want to get over on the Humanity Forward Rapid Response Slack or anything like that, watch previous meetings or this one at a later date. But some of our upcoming events are, like I just said, if you go and your state is not currently active, we're trying to reactivate some states. I just hosted a Pennsylvania meeting for the first time this past weekend to try and bring some people out of the woodwork and get going for, really supporting Humanity Forward with cash advocacy, the cash relief advocacy efforts. Or you can also gather up and start your state chapter to work on whatever you think is important to your state, whether it's ranked choice voting, what's important to you as a group. So there will be a presentation about those models and how to get that going next Wednesday or this Wednesday. There's a little bit.ly down there to get some information or sign up for that call at the bottom of the slide. We also have our book club coming up again. We were going to skip it for the holidays, but we somehow ended up with a ton of registration. So we're going to go at it again rather than wait till January. We're looking at the politics industry, which kind of discusses basically what's wrong with the system. It's not a right or a left thing. The system is set up to kind of hinder our ability to push productive legislation forward. And she proposes a lot of great solutions for that. So it's a really great read. And we'll be talking about that book on Tuesday, December 22nd. There's also a Yang Speak interviewing Catherine. So if you can't read the book, you can listen to the Yang Speak and still take part in the conversation and know what's going on. So that's good. And then our Partners Income Movement have a meeting every Tuesday where they kind of talk about what's going on in the basic income community in general. So that's a great way to plug in if you're interested as well. Right now, the big push from Humanity Forward is this cash advocacy relief. So making sure we get some direct cash payments out to all Americans, because that's kind of what everybody needs right now with COVID-19 happening. So a lot of states have signed on, but if you're interested in signing on your state or learning more about it, you can go to the link down at the bottom or email Gray, who's actually on this call. So maybe when we go into the hang at the end, you could also ask him some questions or ask him some questions in the chat if you want about that effort. And what's really great is our State of the States is a new segment we're about to start where we're going to kind of spotlight different states and what they're working on. So tonight we're going to do Massachusetts, and Keith's going to take a few minutes to kind of talk about the success and the lessons that they're learning with their cash advocacy effort, to hopefully also inspire some other states and give some insight into what that looks like. So Keith, are you on?
Yep. Hey, Megan, thanks.
Take it away.
Yeah, and thanks for also formatting the slide. I believe you helped with that, so thank you so much.
No problem.
So I'll just give a quick overview, and I'll try to go through this quick. So So I'll just give a quick overview of what I'm going to talk about real quick. The first is some of what we've learned here in Massachusetts with regards to congressional pressure for cash relief UBI. And the second is, how to kind of replicate these processes we've been using within your state. And to help with that, we have some simple templates that you can build out as you see fit. And I'll just, kind of quickly round it out with some general advice from my point of view. You can kind of follow along with, what I'm going through here at that tiny URL that I just dropped in chat. So in terms of lessons that we've learned, of the reps that we've spoken to thus far, those who are already in favor of, or proposed bills regarding cash relief for UBI are, very open to speaking with us, and sometimes without even being prompted with a question, they'll tell us what we need to know in terms of strategy to kind of advance the conversation around this and get their colleagues on board. And this makes sense because, it's helping make their jobs easier. They've been trying to move this legislation along, and the value that we can provide to them is to support them in those efforts. So in terms of some of the strategies that we've outlined thus far, and these are in no particular order, these are from representatives that we've talked with. The first is the creation of testimonials seem to work more effectively than the presentation of data. They've suggested prioritizing contacting newer reps that are looking to establish a political foothold, and contacting younger reps who are, they see as less inclined towards the idea of means testing. Prioritizing contacting lesser known reps because they have more bandwidth to engage with their constituents. And finally, I think this one is really important. They push to, have folks show up to their office hours where, you can kind of build enthusiasm around ideas by having multiple constituents show up to discuss those ideas. So just to stress, this is really just a start in terms of the strategies that we've been able to collect. Just some examples, really, we're hoping to, get more as we have more conversations with representatives. And, there's so much more to be gained from these conversations as well. One of the big gains is finding leads on who to talk to next. So oftentimes, they'll mention either a representative that they think would be good to talk to, or maybe a researcher that has helped them, draft out their legislation that they put forward. Also just, finding how best we can support them in their efforts, gaining resources to recordings or transcripts of hearings on proposed bills, and even potentially contributing to the contents of them. So in one case, we talked to a representative who was open to, us contributing to the drafting of the legislation they were putting forward. So moving on to the second part, how do you kind of replicate this in the context of your state? The main thing I would recommend here is, for the sake of expediency, start to work on this on your own, or maybe with one other volunteer within your chapter who's, equally committed. Then bring everything you learn and all the conversations that you have and whatnot back to your chapter, rather than trying to, figure out availability for your chapter as a whole and coordinate that with a rep. So in terms of what you do, I think the first step is probably just to contact a representative, try to set up a 20-minute call with them or staff, and it'll just kind of help get things in motion and give you some clarity on how to proceed. And while you're doing this, if you can start to build out data sets on everything related to UBI and cash relief within your state, where representatives stand on it, organizations within your state that might be able to help you, a content library for all things, UBI and cash related, that's either produced within your state or about your state. That's been, really fun for me to work on, just trying to get different videos and articles and kind of build a library. And then maybe, try to get 3 or so volunteers that are kind of on the periphery of work on your state and not maxed out on what they can do, and just kind of broach the conversation on what you're working on, and see if they might be able to, if and where they might be able to help you, and try to get their feedback on some of the tools you're building out, and then try to expand that orbit. See if you can find representatives or organizations to build relationship with, and then try to hold a statewide meeting to go over this in greater detail, and start to include that orbit in this conversation that you're having. And I guess my final piece of advice here is try to not get bogged down in the data gathering. There's so much data that you can be collecting that I think it's important to not just work on that. Like, try to contact the reps and volunteers and thought leaders and set up meetings and loop them into your own to kind of balance that data collection. And I think that's it.
Awesome. Thank you, Keith. And I'm sure you can also send some questions to Keith in the chat if you would like. Not to offer you up or anything, Keith. Sorry about that, but I'm sure people might have some questions or be curious. I'm going to try and breeze through some of the next bits so we can get to our star of the hour, which is also, I think why a lot of people are here. We're all thinking about Georgia right now. So I just want to toss this up. Yang visited the Math House today, which is a house put together of a bunch of canvassers by the math movement. So, they've kind of brought them down. Tully's been hosting them in this house, going out and canvassing to get out the vote. So if you want to donate to the Math House, there's a link down there at the bottom. And then what else do we have? Just some other general links if you want to hook up with Humanity for Georgia and see what they're doing to help out. You can sign up for Daniel Blackman's campaign, the Senate campaigns with Fair Fight to get out the vote, things like that. Just some links of where you can go. If you like to phone bank, there's a really fantastic deep canvassing phone bank being put on by People's Action right now. So deep canvassing, you actually try to get into conversations, and it has a greater impact of actually swaying a vote or having influence. So they do that at the moment. It's Sundays 3 to 6, Wednesdays and Thursdays 6 to 9. I believe there's more times later on, though, that amount increases. But if you don't like talking to people, there's also a letter writing party, a Zoom party put on by Humanity for Georgia every Monday. So if you go to their website, to their kind of daily digest where they update you on all the ways you can volunteer, there's a link to join that party there at ga.hfmovement.org/daily. And you can also follow them on any of their social media to kind of keep up to date on what's happening. But anyways, sorry for the delay, Daniel, but we're ready for you. Daniel Blackman is running. He's the third runoff race that's actually happening in Georgia right now, but not getting as much attention just because, Senate. But it's such an important position, the Public Service Commission in Georgia, that actually has a huge impact on people's day-to-day lives. So I figured, would you like to do a little introduction about yourself? I also have this slide from previously, because I just thought that the statistic was great, this 18% versus 5%.
It's it's a pretty alarming statistic. So, wow, Sunday night watching this debate that just ended with Reverend Warnock and Kelly Loeffler was pretty interesting, but I think you couldn't have more eloquently put it out there, as we are the third runoff in Georgia. As long as people remember that there is a third runoff, that is that helps us immensely. We have an opportunity to be the first Democratic candidate. We, meaning my campaign teams, have so many people working hard for us. I have the opportunity to become the first Democrat elected statewide in almost 20 years, and it's a privilege. And I think to be on the front line of the climate fight, to be able to fight for those who have high utility rates in Georgia. The slide you just showed, unfortunately, that is very accurate. Georgia has the 5th highest electric rates in the United States, and the 8th highest utility rates overall. What that means is, according to what you just saw, 5% on average in the nation of a person's paycheck goes to their utility bill. But in Georgia, 18% of our paychecks go towards our utility bills for an array of reasons. We have so many charges that are fixed in our costs, from a $30 billion nuclear project to a $500 million coal ash cleanup. There's so many variables that play into the challenges that Georgians have in keeping up with their utility bills. COVID-19 has shown us more than anything else that we as a nation, but namely the state of Georgia, are not in a position to really have humanity and the people at the forefront of the conversation. So many Georgia families are struggling, like families around the country. COVID-19 has kids at home in rural Georgia that don't have access to wireless broadband. There are a lot of kids in our college system that can't, even though they're working from home, they can't access their lessons. Senior citizens that are working really, really hard to make sure that they have telemedicine. I mean, these things have really crippled Georgia's economy and our ability to recover. So I'm honored. I mean, it's one of those spaces where we were able and fortunate enough to make a runoff. We had 4.8 million votes in our race. We were able to garner right under 2.4 million votes. And we did it off of having a very strong ground game that was a people-centered focus. And we didn't leave anything off the table. We worked very hard to make sure that we addressed the issues that dealt with public health, high utilities, wireless broadband. And to be honest with you, we worked to make sure that our message was all inclusive, and we were able to be successful. So I'm very happy to be here. Great conversation. Just got off the road with John Ossoff and Reverend Warnock in 2 counties in Georgia. And we feel pretty energized.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us. I do just want to open the floor up to questions. We typically try to keep it to, 1 question per person. And then if we come back around, we can do some second questions, follow-ups later, but we like everybody to have an opportunity. Try to keep your question as brief as possible. So if you want to just do hand raises in the Zoom, or you can do like a hand raise in the chat.
Can I make a disclaimer real quick?
Yes, go for it.
Nothing is off limits. You can ask me about being a candidate. You can ask me about my personal life. I am not playing. I'm so focused on having fun with this runoff. So if it's an energy question, an environment question, public service commission, let's have a good time, guys. Don't look at this as just a Q&A session for a political candidate. I want you to get to know who I am.
That is actually the reason for our name is an Ask Me Anything, because we do kind of,
I love it.
It's I think it's a person's like kind of history and who they are is also just so valuable as well. We don't learn that enough. So I'm excited. I guess the first hand I saw is Rachel. Would you like to start us off?
Hi, my name's Rachel Davies.
Hey, Rachel.
I'm here in Atlanta, Georgia, and I work with the local, we're called Humanity Forward Georgia, and we grew out of the Yang Gang here in Atlanta. So I've heard you speak before, and it's like a lot of things click into place because I'm wondering why my freaking utility bill is so high. And I hear a lot of people talk about that in Atlanta too. But so I'm wondering if you have I was going to ask about your more like details for your plan on how you would like approach that problem or work towards helping people bring their bills down, or I don't know, since you said ask me anything and like let's make it fun. How about like what inspired you to run for public office?
All right, so let's start with the latter question first. What inspired me to run for office? I grew up with asthma, and being a kid in this country, Black children and brown children in this country get asthma 3 times the national average. So growing up as an athlete that had asthma, and then as a college student at Clark Atlanta University, I really began to see a lot of issues that I knew were related to the environment, but no one really ever explained that to me. And the interesting thing was my entry point to environmental justice was Hurricane Katrina. When Hurricane Katrina happened, I volunteered with my church to go down to the lower 9th Ward of New Orleans. And I saw chaos, I saw death, I saw, floods that I couldn't explain. And somebody said, yeah, this is global warming. This is climate change. And no one that looked like me had ever really broken down what that meant. And I'm a nerd. I'm the kind of person that will hear something and I will literally bury myself in it until I understand. So I started studying for years, met Al Gore on 2 separate occasions when he released Inconvenient Truth. And I saw space for more voices of color that can help to encourage our community to understand fundamentally what role we play and why we're adversely impacted, why 68% of communities of color are within a 30-mile proximity to a coal-fired plant, why our children get asthma at the rates we get, why did, Katrina happen, why did the Flint water crisis happen. So I was inspired because of the events that were happening around us that people that looked like me weren't explaining. And then in 2015, I was invited to the Vatican for a really amazing climate convergence where we were able to witness the Pope give his encyclical on climate change ahead of the Paris Climate Accords. And once I got bit with the global bug of fighting the climate crisis, I realized that I had to do something locally. So that was my entry point into running for Public Service Commission. Your other question about lowering utility bills is more of a complicated question because the Public Service Commission in Georgia consists of 5 members. All 5 are Republican. All 5 take money from the utility companies in which they regulate. And there's a quote that says it's hard to get a man to understand a thing when his salary depends on him not understanding it. So we're in a very tight situation in Georgia where our utility company, our biggest utility company, Georgia Power, is overwhelmingly involved in the campaigns and in the inner workings of the policymaking process as well as the regulatory process in Georgia. So there are 3 things I want to do. Number 1, the first step and the biggest hurdle was getting Biden and Harris elected because Vice President-elect Biden has committed to $2 trillion to fighting the climate crisis. We believe we're already in conversation with the Biden administration. We believe that we can help to allocate a certain amount of funds to accelerate a clean energy economy in the state of Georgia. We think that by doing that, we can, have more of an advantage in introducing low and moderate income communities into the solar space and into other renewables that can help not only with public health, but in lower utilities if we can introduce and support community solar. Number 2, we've got to really just cap off the overruns in Georgia. Most ratepayers don't get what's called an itemized bill. So an itemized bill will show you every charge you are utilized for, from your meter being read to a storm to the gasoline that the utility trucks use when you're getting lights back on. We need to understand that there's certain things on our bill. For instance, there's something called the nuclear construction cost recovery. That is the result of a $14.5 billion project that was supposed to go online in 2017. Well, unfortunately, it's 5 years behind schedule and it's $14.5 billion over budget. Guess who gets to pay for it, Rachel? You and I. So that alone factors in to the fact that Georgia's base rates have been increased, and we need to not only cap what other costs are coming on, but the last point I'll make is that we need to fundamentally stand up to the utility companies. Our campaign has decided very early that we will not take any money from the fossil fuel industry. Why? Because we want to be able to go to the utility companies and put people ahead of profits. Georgia Power is a shareholder-driven company, so their interest is in the profitability of their company and the return on investment of their shareholders. Well, that means that all the costs the Public Service Commission has to deal with are shifted onto the ratepayers and not onto the utility companies that are putting us into the position we're in. So we have a very robust plan. And the great thing is it's a 6-year term. So I get to have some time to really get my feet wet, work, educate the community, and work with people like you to make sure that we can bring new ideas to the utility companies instead of just giving them a blank check to everything they want to do.
Thank you so much. Great answer. I think so. There's someone next after me.
Yeah, thank you, Daniel.
Thank you, Rachel.
Up next is Jacqueline.
Okay.
Are you ready, Jacqueline? You're muted, Jacqueline.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm sorry. You had already answered part of my question about the PUC makeup in your state. I've been fighting about this for years, decades, in my own state, Pennsylvania.
Wow.
To fight against deregulation and privatization of utilities, which originally caused the problem. I was a member of CAUSE for 8 years, which fought against this in multiple states, cause, being Citizens Action Against Utility Shutoff. One of the questions that I had for you were you aware of the fact that under these deregulatory activities that occurred back in the early aughts and late 90s, that in almost every state with deregulation, part of that allows the utility companies to charge ratepayers a tax, a surcharge tax, but they are not required to then turn that tax over to the state and federal government. They are effectively allowed to tax you and then keep that, a tax that's all folded into part of your bill. Have you looked at that?
Oh, of course. I mean, you're spot on. You're one of the few people that ever catch these loopholes that allow the utility companies to not only be profitable, but to really pass on their mistakes to the consumer. You know, whether it's fracking in a state like Pennsylvania or it's coal ash cleanup in a state like Georgia. You know, Georgia is the #1 importer and exporter of coal and coal ash in the United States. So we need to understand that when Georgia Power says we need $1 billion more for our nuclear project, they're profitable. I want people to understand this. Georgia Power has not lowered their profit. They have been profitable this year. And not only has our moratorium on disconnections ended, but when the delays happened because of COVID-19 at our 2 new nuclear reactors, which I'll get into a little bit later, what essentially happened was Georgia Power said, hey, you know, we've lost $7 or $8 million because utility companies haven't been paying ratepayers haven't been paying their bill. So exactly to your point, they were able to say that they needed $7.8 million to be recouped, which comes directly from us. So the model in which you're talking about is not new. It's something that utility companies have been doing for a long time. In my state, like Georgia, we have a monopoly. And Southern Company, which operates in Georgia, Alabama, Florida, South Carolina, Mississippi, this company is so big and has so much of a financial stronghold that these loopholes allow them to be profitable. Here's another thing, which is a very deceptive practice that's happening right now in Georgia. Even Aaron Brockovich brought it up. Georgia Power is actually buying up the land where they should be being fined, where coal ash cleanup is needing to take place. They spent $15 million to buy up the land so that they won't be held accountable for the regulatory process. And they have now, with the Sierra Club, had to be taken to court for a judge to try and reverse the $500 million in cost overruns that are now paid by ratepayers. And I want you to really understand that to her question, ratepayers in Juliet, Georgia have found lead and mercury in their water. If you Google Monroe County, Georgia, in Monroe County, Georgia, they have found uranium in the well water. The utility companies aren't responsible for the cleanup and they're not being fined for it, but the ratepayers are steadily paying out for a mistake they didn't make. So thank you for that question. I'm very aware of it. And it's something that's going to take a lot more than PUCs or PSCs around the country. It's going to take work at the federal level to make sure that safeguards are in place to make sure that these utility companies are not getting over on ratepayers and private citizens.
Wow, thank you.
Thank you.
And
Thank you.
I feel like there should be theme music like in between the questions.
I know there's always that awkward pause of trying to find the unmute button. But that was like, yeah, you're a fountain of information. I'm very impressed.
Thank you.
So our next
I
question
told you I'm a
is,
nerd. I read way too much.
we're the Yang Gang. We love nerds, so I think you're in the right place. Our next question is Laman.
Hello, Atlanta resident here.
Hey, Laman.
Hello. So I feel that UBI activism should be closely aligned with climate activism. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
So in your potential 6-year term, do you think it's possible for Georgia to shut down our last remaining coal plants, especially since towers 3 and 4 of Plant Vogtle are scheduled to open in that time? So yeah, do you think it's possible to get off coal? Because I think there's only it's only 5% of our grid.
So I'm going to give you the most non-political answer that I can give you, okay? I do not think it's in the interest of the utility companies to make that happen because they're going to hold on to every opportunity they can to get money out of the coal industry. I think fossil fuels have had a death grip on the United States for a long time. I mean, if you even go back to 1968, Bobby Kennedy and Martin Luther King Jr. were killed within 61 days of each other, and they both were fighting for the same thing. Bobby Kennedy had just left Appalachia because he was there in one of the poorest parts of the country because what coal industry workers. We have to understand that in our country, we've gotten away from what is right, what is the best thing to do for the best interest in the will of the people. And we've gone towards an economy and a society where we're so fixated on profits that I believe that question, it should be a simple yes. You know, if we can find $14.5 billion more to invest into nuclear, why the heck can't we find a couple more $1 billion to invest into solar and other renewables? Why can't we look at wind research in the North Georgia mountains? Why can't we look at coastal Georgia, not just with solar opportunities, but with landowners and farmers that have agribusiness opportunities to expand their bases, whether it's through biofuels or multiple different aspects that we can explore. So I think your question in the most, the most realistic opportunity, electricity generation in 2019 versus coal accounted for 20%. So I want people to understand that the coal industry is so strong in Georgia. And I'll end with this part. In 2013, I actually surprisingly worked not only the Sierra Club, not only the faith community in Georgia, but we also worked with the Tea Party. Right? And the Tea Party said, you know what, we agree, there's a monopoly and there's a huge problem. And here's what we all galvanized around. There's something in Georgia called an integrated resource plan, where the utility companies come and they say, look, we're going to give you our 20-year plan for Georgia. Well, in 2013, Georgia Power's plan from 2013 to 2023 had nothing but fossil fuels and nuclear in their mix and natural gas. So I want you to understand that there was not 1 ounce of solar from 2013 to 2023 that was going to be in Georgia Power's mix. That just shows you the power of the fossil fuel industry and their inability to try and relinquish and go towards a cleaner and more renewable future. We were able, fortunately, to get 525 megawatts of solar included. And the way we did that was by building a coalition and making sure we put the utility companies on notice that we have to accelerate it. What I would do as a public service commissioner to help to change that narrative is really maximize on the next 4 years of the Biden-Harris administration, which is why it is so critical to get John Ossoff and Raphael Warnock elected. Senate majority for this administration means we can really turn back some of the challenges that the Trump administration has made for a clean energy future, but then also implement opportunities in states like Georgia and cities like Atlanta to make sure that the investment is there for us to be able to drive that conversation and move further away from coal and more towards renewable energy in the state.
Awesome, thank you. The next question that I have is from the chat, so I'm just going to read it. And it says, please tell us a bit about the coal ash pond closest to Columbus. What condition are they in and what danger are we in being downriver from it?
Well, I would have to look into that one. I'm more familiar with what's going on with Plant Shearer near the coal ash plant near Juliet, Georgia, and other parts of the state. And forgive me, but we're currently we're mapping out the entirety of the state, and we're looking at the effects by zip code and by county. I'm from Columbus, Georgia, surprisingly, and we were just in Columbus about 2 or 3 weeks ago. And one of the main issues we talked about was the water. So we're dealing with river keepers right now, Riverkeeper Alliance. I'm a board member of the Georgia Conservation Voters. I've been endorsed by the Sierra Club. What I do know about coal ash in the state of Georgia is that Georgia Power's, I think 11 of their 12 plants, we already know where the challenges are happening. We don't know the depth of what some of those impacts are, but we're focusing on going to these cities. So I'll actually be in Columbus. I'll be in Juliet, Georgia on Thursday. We have a debate, which is great for us. So we get to debate our opponent. We're going to be in Juliet, Georgia. We're going to be meeting with local officials. We're going to be meeting with civic leaders, with community leaders, and making sure that we're mapping it out. So we have a power mapping strategy within our campaign right now. We've got folks that are deployed in about 6 or 7 counties in Georgia, and their specific focus is twofold. Number one, to make sure that we're mapping out the coal ash challenges, because a judge just reopened that case in Georgia, and we're going to be able to know what areas are going to specifically be able to challenge the $500 million coal ash bill charge that's been placed on ratepayers. But the second thing, and I think is equally as important, is we want to look at the areas on our map that are in alignment with where the highest numbers of COVID were and what the environmental conditions were in those areas. So what I'll do is put my email in the chat. We'll be in Columbus on the 13th of this month, and we should have the information more detailed as to how Columbus is being impacted. And just to be very clear, I have a vested interest because I'm from Muskogee County, Columbus, Georgia. I went to middle school and high school. My family still has a house there, and it's very important for me to know the impact because the Chattahoochee River is overwhelmingly impacted by these challenges. And we lost federal funding at the end of 2016 and throughout the Trump administration for testing waterways, specifically the Chattahoochee River and the Savannah River site. We lost federal funding. So we're no longer even testing the water quality for us to answer that in real time because the information we currently have is outdated.
Wow.
Yeah,
I think
so
we get a lot of.
I hate, that's one thing I will tell about you to kind of like let you guys know a little bit about me. I hate not having an answer, but the answer I don't have, I will find an answer for and get back to you. But we are dealing with so much information that we don't have access to. And if the folks in Juliet, Georgia, for example, didn't raise so much hell, I'm going to be honest with you. I mean, we may not be at this point where we're able to relitigate and potentially shift those charges back to the utility companies. But the current state of Georgia is we have a very, very powerful utility company that's really making it hard for people like myself to get the information we need because transparency is almost non-existent.
Wow. We get a lot of wows and oh my gods in the chat. I don't know if you can see it.
I can't see it. I'm
but
trying to
it's
multitask
fascinating.
right
Yeah.
now.
But our next question is coming from Brad.
Hey, Daniel.
Hey, where you from, Brad?
So I'm a reverend up in your backyard in Forsyth County.
Wow.
And
hey, Brad.
Wanted to ask a fun question for you.
Okay.
Wanted to ask you, for a lot of the people out of state might not know the significance of your previous running. I believe it was in 2016 in Forsyth County as a Blackman, and know this well from working within the county, and was curious how your experience of living in Forsyth and the significance of that moment, and especially now with the momentum you're gaining, what you learned from that, and what you've learned from your experience of Forsyth County and understanding the great differences in different parts of Georgia.
Brad, that is a fun question because I'll say this: we got a chance to be interviewed by Apple and by Oprah to talk about her experience in Forsyth County, because our county in 1987, when Hosea Williams, Coretta Scott King, Dick Gregory, Harry Belafonte, and so many more leaders marched for the Brotherhood March, because as you know, our county was a much different place 30 years ago. And what Brad is talking about to the viewers, I am the first African-American to run for office in Forsyth County, Georgia. That happened in 2016. 100 years ago, well, over 100 years ago, in 1912, Forsyth County was the epicenter of really a mass expulsion of all of its Black residents. There were 1,100 Black folks that called Forsyth County home in a county that had about 6,100 people. And there was unfortunately a rape and a murder of a white woman named May Crow, and it subsequently caused 4 African Americans to be indicted. One of them was lynched, and the other 3 weren't given a fair trial. Fast forward 100 years, and Forsyth County was known as a sundown town. And so we were one of the last known sundown towns in the Union. And what most people don't realize is the reason why Hosea Williams marched in Forsyth County was because in 1987, when they came to go to a church, to the Reverend's point, they were met with bricks and stones and sticks and guns, and they were turned around. Well, Hosea Williams, for those of you who know the name, was one of the lieutenants of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And when they turned around that bus of a couple hundred, they came back with 20,000. And as a result, Forsyth County, unfortunately, was under a very dark shadow for a long time. We even have erected the statue of Hiram Parks Bell as early as soon as 2010. In 2010, right, we're talking about 10 years ago, a Confederate monument was erected in the downtown coming area where I live. So I want people to understand this is not just something that happened 100 years ago, and the remnants of what this county stood for is still there. So here's what I learned from it. Number one, we're not that same county anymore. I think that there's still challenges in our county. I think we still have a long way to go, but Georgia behind Texas has the second highest amount of counties in the United States. We have 159 counties in Georgia. So living in a very conservative area as the Black progressive guy in the state of Georgia, and living in the backyard of an unapologetically Trump-Pence area, we were able to move that needle. And here's the amazing thing. I ran in 2016. President Obama in 2008 got 18%. In 2012, in 2008, he got 20%. In 2012, it went down a little bit to 18%. I got 26% when I ran in 2016. And when Stacey Abrams ran, the really cool thing is Stacey Abrams got 26,000 votes in Forsyth County. Well, I got 36,000 votes this last election, which means the trend from 2008 to 2020, just in 8 years, we have literally flipped 2 precincts, and the county has fundamentally changed with the fastest growing Indian population in the United States. Even though the numbers aren't where we want them to be, I think this part of the state, being at the foothill of the North Georgia counties that I would represent, it really shows the reason why Biden and Harris were able to win in Georgia, because in areas like Forsyth County, where Democrats would not dare put their name on a ballot, in areas like Raven County, Dawson, Lumpkin, and so many other North Georgia counties where Democrats just didn't turn out, Democrats turned out in record numbers. And here's the thing that I'm excited about more than anything else. My experiences in Forsyth County have made it a lot easier to go into South Georgia, rural Georgia, and all over the state, where the reflective space of like the demographic of what the politics are locally, it's made it easier for me to go into areas that are quote unquote hostile and still have a message of lower utilities and expanding wireless broadband. Because when people know where I'm from, that stigma of not being from Atlanta kind of opens the door to making people feel more comfortable about what our platform is. So thank you for letting me kind of go in that little historical context, man. The county has a long way to go. If anyone on this call wants to learn more about the county, there's a book called Blood at the Root by my friend Patrick Phillips, and it actually chronicles a lot of the history of the county in which I live.
Oh, wow. Can somebody type that title into the chat so we can all have that referenced?
Yeah, Blood at the Root by Patrick Phillips. I'll make sure I type it in if somebody else doesn't find it first.
Great. I do just want to note it's 9:23, so I want to be respectful of your time since I know we only told you till 9:30. So if you have a hard cutoff or whatever,
y'all need
let
to
us know.
9:45 and you guys keep acting, I'll stay on.
I mean, we've got a queue of questions, so I think we can definitely keep you past. I just want to make sure you're okay with that.
Nope. Look, you know what the difference is tonight is 90% of the time I'm on the road. So look, I'm at home. Like I got my fireplace behind me. I'm on my couch. So I'm comfortable. If I were on the road, you might not have me for 30 more minutes, but I'm good. So we can keep going.
Great. Thank you so much. Our next question then is from Catherine.
Thank you for joining us. And I guess I had 2 quick questions.
Okay.
There's a lot of focus on kind of all of the races that are happening right now. So for folks that are kind of looking into Georgia and thinking like, how should I spend my time? Sometimes they think, oh, should I be phone banking or text banking for the 2 senatorial candidates? And so I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about how your campaign and their campaigns are interrelated, that, turnout for one of you really supports turnout for all 3 of you. And then also we have folks in Georgia who are canvassing door to door, and, every day there's more and more groups kind of standing up to go out and do appropriate socially distanced canvassing. But if you had any advice of particular areas in Georgia that you would suggest folks focusing on, we're always looking for advice from folks that are, really plugged into the data of how best effectively to support you all.
So Catherine, where do you live?
I'm up in Massachusetts, but I'm doing some tech backend support for our Georgia chapter.
Okay, well, I was born in Boston. First of all, I was born in Dorchester. And so thank you for calling in from Massachusetts. If you guys can see the map behind me, I pride myself in that map because right here, if my finger's right, that's Georgia, and we went blue. So I'm very excited about the fact that we were able to do that. And here's how we did it. Stacey Abrams gets a lot of credit, and she should. What Stacey has been able to do with voter registration, with Fair Fight, with her leadership around the country, it has really brought a lot of attention to Georgia. But here's the thing, there were a lot of Stacey's in Georgia that helped to do that. And the reason why we were able to be so effective was because people came into our state and they worked in unison with folks that are here on the ground. And don't let me forget, because I'm going to start with the last question and go back. So don't let me forget to talk about the comparison between the Senate races and our race. So what we did in Georgia was we fundamentally built out, because the Democratic Party of Georgia as a whole, they had not done as good of a job statewide. So the way Georgia is, we have something called OTP and ITP, right? ITP is just in the perimeter. So the Metro Atlanta region consists of about 22 counties. So Atlanta is what most people, when they come to Georgia, most people come into Atlanta. The city itself is 500,000 people. The Metro Atlanta region is 5 million. So the way the Democratic Party strategy has been is they believe that if you focus on, Fulton County, DeKalb, Clayton, Henry, Cobb, Gwinnett, counties like that where there are high minority populations, then you should technically be able to win every election. Well, here's the problem in Georgia. In Georgia, we had over 700,000 registered inactive voters. So what we were able to do was we were able to start targeting some of those areas by doing outside the perimeter work. Remember, ITP means inside the perimeter, which is Atlanta and the 22 counties. Outside the perimeter is everything outside of that space. So the way we were able to be effective with our race, particularly to get to a runoff, was we basically looked at the state of Georgia and we looked at areas that Democrats pretty much were told that were off limits. Because we knew that if we can get margins in areas where Republicans, for example, like I'll give you one county, Liberty County, Georgia, on average had 13 or 14,000 votes in an election year. Why? Because even though there were Democrats and progressives down there, Democrats in Metro Atlanta regions and statewide usually wouldn't go to Liberty County because it's just not an area where you're going to pick up a lot of votes to be able to get the margins you quote unquote think you need. Well, Liberty County, Georgia just went from 14,000 votes to 21,000 votes for Democrats in this past election. Now, why did that happen? Because folks in Liberty that never felt like they were important got a visit from Daniel Blackman. They got a visit from Raphael Warnock. So it motivated an extra 5,000 or 6,000 people to show up at the polls. Joe Biden only won the state of Georgia by 12,000 votes. So I want you to understand the importance of picking up 6,000 votes here, 4,000 votes there, 500 down here, 7,000 over there. Those votes add up. So here's what people like you can do. Number one, get out of the way of the people of Georgia. When you come to Georgia and find the way you fit in. I mean this with all due respect, because one of the things that has been a challenge in Georgia, and one of the issues we have right now is that there are groups coming into cities in Georgia and they're completely taking over and they're not including the local voices. So I would encourage anyone that wants to come into Georgia and canvass in a safe way that is mindful of COVID-19, we would encourage you to, one, study the area that you're going to be coming into. And then number two, find out who the local people are that are really doing the work and have been doing the work for a long time. And then just simply ask them, how can we help? What can we do? Would you like us to phone bank? That same question you asked us, phone banking, postcards, direct mail, those are the things that are really helping candidates like myself because, hey, with 2 U.S. Senate races, there's already a ton of support and volunteerism in Georgia. So I think that most people like yourself in Massachusetts has to be able to say from a distance, let's find an organization or two and let's just align ourselves. If you got 10 volunteers or 100 volunteers, find a city like Savannah, Columbus, Macon, Augusta. There are certain cities around Georgia that have high Democratic turnout. The young lady earlier mentioned Columbus, Georgia. In my hometown of Columbus, Georgia, only 60% of the folks turn out to vote. And if we target areas like that with people like yourself, we'll turn out that vote. So here's where I'll close out on that question. The way our race impacts the U.S. Senate races is this. we have a more direct impact, in my opinion, from the polling we've done. We are more valuable to the US Senate races because we deal with pocketbook issues. As I stated earlier, in the state of Georgia, we have the 5th highest electric rates in the United States. We have the 8th highest overall utility rates in the US. So with our race, we can go into areas that are really disenfranchised, and we motivate bases that Jon Ossoff and Warnock just really can't get to. I mean, these guys are spending $300-400 million on media buys, and we're out there knocking on doors, going into counties where there's only one election precinct. You know, we're going into areas that's really a lot harder, but our ground game helps with up ballot momentum. So we're getting a lot of folks to the polls that are senior citizens on a fixed income. Guess what their light bills went on? You know, those coal ash things we talked about? Coal ash and those polluted waterways have Democrats, Republicans, Libertarians, and Independents. So our effort is bringing more attention to the local level that has more upward momentum to people like Ossoff and Warnock running for U.S. Senate.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
All right. Our next question is Constance.
Hi, can you guys hear me okay?
Sure can, Constance.
Okay. Hello, Daniel Blackman. Thank you, and to everybody for having us. This is really awesome. I remember when Mr. Blackman was running back in 2015, and so I can vouch that Georgia needs Blackman, and this is a very much a well-deserved work. So my question, so I live in Lawrenceville, Georgia. I grew up in Wrightsville, Georgia, and so I am really passionate about rural Georgia. And so my question is, I'm from a town that still just has one traffic light.
Wow.
And yeah, we still got one traffic light. It'll probably maybe about 5,000 population. But many citizens still don't have internet because large companies like AT&T find that it's too expensive to go far out on dirt roads. And so people end up with companies that are smaller and are able to charge outrageous rates. So I just wanted to kind of ask you, what do you see as a timeline in terms of getting rural internet across Georgia? What does that plan look like?
Okay, so one, it's not a priority, and number two, not a priority in Georgia, not me. It's a priority for me. But so here's what I'm going to say, and I want to preface it by letting people know that COVID-19 is one of the worst things that have happened to our country and to our planet. However, I think that there was no better challenge and risk to heighten the awareness of why utilities and wireless broadband are of the utmost importance. All right, at the end of this year, 23 million Americans run the risk of eviction, and 205 million Americans run the risk of utility disconnection. When you consider wireless broadband in Georgia is going to have an overwhelmingly detrimental effect to low and moderate income communities. 88% of Georgia's prison population reads at a 3rd grade level. Okay, I'm going to repeat that number for everyone that's listening. 88% of Georgia's prison population reads at a 3rd grade level. So what we're seeing now with COVID-19 is, one, the unpreparedness of Georgia as it relates to online learning and infrastructure where wireless broadband and high-speed internet are concerned. But secondly, we're seeing the biggest challenge, which is rural parts of Georgia are being left behind faster than Metro Atlanta that can recover faster for 2 reasons. One, because we have the economic and the technological infrastructure in Metro Atlanta. So as we're hit hard like everybody else, Atlanta versus Albany is a much different story. All the business and commerce in Albany is quite frankly leaving, and Albany State University is not as occupied, which is a historically Black college. So there are towns in Georgia that have already been left behind because Republicans have not invested into healthcare across the state. So we've already had multiple rural areas that have been shut down. So wireless broadband affects our access to to first responder services. I just came from a city where the nearest hospital was 40 minutes away. The nearest hospital, right? You want to talk about one stoplight? We've gone into areas where kids have to drive to a neighboring county to go into an area where Wi-Fi is stronger. We have a debate next week in Juliet, Georgia. And the gentleman I spoke to said, Mr. Blackman, we would love to have you down here, but you can't stay in our county for the debate because we don't have access to wireless broadband here, and you'll probably lose your connection at least 3 times during your debate. So he wants me to come down an hour early, spend some time with a small group, and then drive 25 minutes outside of the county just to have internet. Here's how we can fix that. In February of this year, the FCC announced their largest investment in the history of the country, a $20 billion infrastructure investment that would go into increasing wireless broadband in rural America, not just in Georgia, but across the country. The reason why that's important is because we've been waiting for wireless broadband investment all over this country for a long time. Well, the challenge is how and where and when are those funds going to be deployed? That's why the next 4 years of the Biden-Harris administration is so critical, because we can no longer know that these things exist and have people that represent us without bringing that capital into these places. It's just like the agricultural bill. It's a $600 billion bill to expand broadband in rural areas around the United States because our farmers and landowners are being left behind. So the only way we can fix that is by, one, working with the legislative body. Let me be very clear. The Public Service Commission has nothing to do with the investment opportunities in Georgia, because the policies have to be put in place for companies like AT&T to be able to drive that investment into that part of the state. Where a person like myself comes in that can make that a reality is that I can help lead the effort and have the Public Service Commission as a sounding board to make sure that we map out all these areas that don't have coverage. We're going to be adding that on our website this week. I'm sorry, not on our website. We're going to be adding that in a video message this week, where we're going to be communicating with people around the state to let them understand that we have to drive this investment in the next 3 to 5 years. What COVID-19 is showing us right now is that we may very well go through 2021 with these challenges. And if the infrastructure is not in place, the United Nations released a report, and I'll end right here. The United Nations released a report with their education committee that said 290 million children around the world have dropped out of school since COVID. 1.5 billion children in the world lack access to high-speed internet or wireless broadband. In the United States, it's 50 million individuals. 9 million of those are school-aged. So we need to fundamentally understand that if we don't fix the broadband issue, in my opinion, in the next 1 to 3 years, we are going to see an impact on our educational system and the preparedness of our children that we have never seen in this country, because we're already seeing reading scores are stable. I just read a report. Reading scores in Georgia and in the US are pretty much stable, right? Depending on where you are. But math and science scores have dropped significantly. So my concern is small business opportunities with wireless broadband, especially for minority and women-owned businesses that don't have the funds to keep up, but then also for our K through 12 education that's being left behind. We'll change that by working to make sure those FCC dollars are allocated in parts of the state in Georgia that are left out, but also work with the Biden-Harris administration to encourage them to make the most of the next 4 years by investing into rural and coastal parts of Georgia and around the country.
Thank you.
I give long answers, my bad.
I mean, as long as you're okay with how long you're here too, we're good.
Hey, I'm good.
Next in our queue is Tyler. While Tyler is asking his question, I'm going to very briefly share my screen again, because I want to make sure these links get up here. Now that you've heard Daniel talking and you want to support him, here's some links to figure out how to phone bank. Daniel for Georgia, take action if you want to volunteer any other way, donate, anything you can do to support. I don't know if you have anything else you want to throw out there of how people can best support you in your campaign, Daniel. These are the links.
No, we're re-releasing our Now This video. We're working with the Sunrise Movement to release a really amazing new campaign video. We're uploading 3 of our most recent speeches where we're giving facts and information. So, I mean, share. Anything that you see, follow me on Twitter, Blackman DNA on Twitter. I'll put that in the chat box. Follow me on social media and share the information we put out. There's a lot of work that needs to be done. You can see volunteering to go to danielforgeorgia.com/take-action. You can phone bank, you can donate. More than anything else, we need you to encourage those in Georgia to know there is a third runoff. There's the 2 U.S. Senate races, and there's an opportunity for I will be the only Democrat in Georgia for the next 2 years elected to statewide office until we can get our other statewide constitutional officers. So if you want to talk about the significance of this race, talk about 1, statewide representation in Georgia, and number 2, having a position that can be on the front line of the climate fight. So I'm very, very excited and honored to be able to have you guys as support.
All right. Thank you so much. And Tyler, you can go with your question. I just want to make sure I got these out here.
No problem.
Since I know people are getting tired, we might lose 1 or 2 people, but I want to
Not
make
a problem.
sure.
Hey, Tyler.
How's it going, Daniel? Thank you for taking these questions. You're clearly well thought out, articulate, and you came with the receipts. And I honestly would have thought any better if you were Yang Gang to begin with. But I pretty much have a serious question and a fun question.
Okay.
I want you to pick which one goes first.
Let's do the doctor method where they make you laugh before they stick you with the needle. So I'll go with the fun question first.
Okay, well, this is totally not related to politics, but where do you think the Atlanta Hawks are going to finish in the Eastern Conference this year?
I think the Atlanta Hawks, man, are you in my house or something? Because I'm a Trae Young fan, and I think we have the deepest bench in the NBA right now. So I personally believe that the Atlanta Hawks will make it to at least the second round of the playoffs. I am going to go on a limb. I think we have one of the best point guards in the game. I think Clint Capella gives us some upfront. I'm probably boring half of the audience right now, but I will say this: while I support and love my Hawks, I have been a lifelong diehard Celtics fan because I am originally from Boston, and I'm gonna leave it there. But I think the Hawks will make it to the second round, and I think we can only build and get better because we got a lot of young talent.
Good to hear. So Catherine essentially asked my question, but I just wanted to expand on it a little bit because in the general election, you were 2.9% lower than the Republican incumbent. And I just, from my understanding, the way you articulate it, your path to victory is at the margins between each county in order to get more turnout because you have a bipartisan appeal due to, you speaking straight and the facts. So I guess that's more of an open-ended question, but am I understanding your path to victory clearly?
Well, I mean, in a sense, yes. So our path to victory is being able to really galvanize the entirety of the state. The Democratic Party strategy for a long time in Georgia was simply focusing on just the metro Atlanta region. So we know we're going to do good in Fulton County, DeKalb. So basically those cities around Atlanta, we're going to perform well. We get that. We feel like if we can bring coastal Georgia and rural Georgia and North Georgia into the fold, which we've done, we think that we can motivate our folks to come back out more than theirs. I mean, right now, there's, I'm sure everyone watching the news is witnessing this quote unquote Republican civil war. I mean, you've got Trump just literally came to Georgia and endorsed another candidate to primary our Republican governor in 2 years. You have Republicans that are saying they don't want to come back out to vote. Look, we get it. We're going to let them, do their own thing, and we're going to motivate our base. We think, quite frankly, that Democratic momentum, since the last Democrat that was elected in Georgia was Bill Clinton. That was in 1992, right? From a presidential standpoint. So we think the momentum is going to carry over. Deborah Gonzalez just became Georgia's first DA, a Latina woman DA in the state of Georgia in our history. In Brunswick, Georgia, we just had folks in Brunswick elect a new district attorney after the Ahmaud Arbery killing. So I think there's a certain momentum in Georgia right now that's going to carry on throughout the holidays, and it's going to carry right into January 5th. We feel that if we can make sure that we motivated parts outside of the state, then that momentum can carry on and give us the margins we need. So I would agree with that. And we actually have been endorsed by a conservative radio host in Georgia. We've been invited to 3 Republican groups that are all the way against Plant Vogel. So we're making strides, and I feel good about the opportunity.
Awesome, Daniel. Really going to be looking forward, rooting for you, man. Thank
you so much. And if anyone wants to email me, because I know we're going to lose some people, but Daniel, Daniel, 4FOR, Georgia, @gmail.com, or you can email me direct at Daniel Blackman @danielforgeorgia.com. And that my last name is BLACK. Well, you guys can see it. There he goes right there, Blackman. So pretty easy to remember.
I just want to check back in with you because we are at 9:45. Everyone who hasn't, everybody got to ask their first
anyone has a
question.
question, I'll answer it.
Okay,
I
because
got
we
you.
have some second questions coming around. So
All right, let's do
Rachel's
it.
going to come back and
I
give you
had
another
dinner already,
question.
so I'm good. Hey, Rachel.
It's me
Cool.
again. Okay, so do you like animals? And if so, what is your favorite one? And then second, nuclear's come up a couple of times in the discussion, and in the Yang Gang, we're a little bit more open to nuclear. Yang kind of, at least in the big picture, theoretically supports nuclear as part of the solution to climate change. For me personally, I'm like pretty open-minded to it, but I'm interested in your thoughts. It's not always the most popular thing in the progressive side. Oh my gosh.
That's my answer. This is my buddy. Guess what his name is? His name is Cujo. So yes, this is my buddy right here. He is a Yorkshire Terrier, and so I love him, and he was laying down, so I actually woke him up for him to get a little photo op real quick. My favorite animal, honestly, like I love my dog. I'm an exotic kind of person. Like I grew up in Italy. My dream is to go on a safari in South Africa at some point. So I'm big on if I had to pick any animal right now, I probably would pick a lion. I'm just fascinated by just nature, and I'm not just talking about like when you go to a local zoo. Like I like nature in its element, right? So I'm big on state parks. I just drove across the country last year and took my family to the what did we go to? The Grand Canyon. I'm sorry. You can tell it's late when I have to think like that, right? So we went to the Grand Canyon. Now on nuclear, here's my stance on nuclear, because nuclear is one of those areas where it's so complicated that we really haven't had straightforward answers in a long time. I don't have a problem with new technologies that are coming out that are safe, that have been scientifically proven to have more of a cleaner impact on the environment. I am not a nuclear regulatory person. I'm not a physicist. But when I say I read, I really read. And what I am pleased about is that the nuclear industry has made strides to create more technology that I can actually be a little happier about than the outdated stuff that we currently are faced with that's not secure, that is leaking into our waters. There's something called tritium that leaks into the water. In the Savannah River alone, it only affects women's reproductive systems. I testified before the Nuclear Regulatory Committee because when we took away federal funding from the Savannah River site in Georgia, we ultimately put our women at risk because our ecosystem wasn't being checked for contamination. So I support ultimately a moving further away from the nuclear space into more cleaner renewables, but I'm not opposed to what we have that is updated and upgraded with what I think is the direction we're going in. For instance, with Plant Vogtle, that project is so big right now and so immense, and we've seen so many failures that I just don't support the current space that is putting the burden on the ratepayer and for the challenges we're facing with transparency. I can't even answer the question about the technology with Plant Vogtle 3 and 4 because they haven't released a lot of information. And what they have released with Westinghouse that went bankrupt, we don't know what that service and what that construction looks like going forward. So I will only support technology that has been scientifically proven to be cleaner and safer, because I believe that energy and our ability to operate as a country needs to be done in the most safe and reliable way. But we're over investing into the fossil fuel industry and quite frankly in Georgia into nuclear, and under invested into solar and other renewables. We need to have a more balanced approach, but we got to make sure what we have is safe and clean. So that's my answer, and I'm still learning in that area. I think there's a lot that we're going to have to unpackage once I'm elected. So thank you, Rachel. And are you in Georgia?
Yes, I'm in Atlanta.
All right. Well, I hope I've earned your vote, Rachel.
Definitely.
She's our humanity forward Georgia president, right, Rachel? I think you're the president of HFGA.
Technically, currently.
Yeah.
We got to stay in touch, Rachel. We got to have another conversation.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Next in our queue is Brad again.
Okay.
Hey, Daniel. So at the local church where I pastor, we have worked with an agency out of Atlanta called Georgia Interfaith Power and Light. I don't know if you're familiar with it. They have.
Shirley has been my mentor for 20 years.
That's awesome, man. Great people. We've recently done a solar audit through them. It's a great resource for any faith community within Georgia, and found that if we put solar panels on our gym and on top of our sanctuary, 100% of our electrical would be clean energy from those solar panels based on our current energy output. But I've learned a lot about solar in Georgia in this process, that there are only 2 companies that would be willing to do bids for us. And even in that, it doesn't line up as well with other states in terms of the potential savings that can come from it. There's not sort of incentives that you can find in other places. And so I'm curious, not only for businesses or faith communities or whatever, but even for, individual homes, how can Georgia do better to incentivize solar? Because it is a no-brainer. I mean, I've been able to talk with members at my church in what is Forsyth County, a conservative area, and the climate change argument might not be something that's important to them, but if it saves them a few pennies, that is something that's important to them.
Yeah, fiscal conservatives tend to be socially progressive when you save them money.
Yes.
So, I mean, here's what I would say to that specific question. I think it has to be done at the county municipal level. Again, I went to Rome and to the Vatican in 2015, and was able to witness the entry points of the Paris Accords. And then Trump got elected, and we moved away from everything. But what sustained the United States was the county and municipal levels that were able to work in unison with their county commissions, their school boards, and their local government. Right. So when you look at a county commission and you look at city council, for instance, there are certain things you can push from an economic standpoint that makes sense. Like in Dalton, Georgia, they were able to get solar manufacturing because it bought jobs. So I think we need to talk about, for instance, in Forsyth County, we have the Alliance Academy. Why not go to the Alliance Academy and utilize that program, right, to teach kids about not only solar manufacturing, but solar installation? I mean, why not turn it into an entrepreneurial opportunity for our young people? Because right now you can take mechatronics and at the Alliance Academy, you can study the drone operation, you can take the solar track. Why not elevate those programs and make it a partnership, for instance, with the University of North Georgia? And why not utilize that space with our children and with our college age students, and then work with the local Chamber of Commerce, which I'm a member of? Why not build a coalition that drives the investment? There's a city in Georgia that did that called Athens. They created something called Solarize Athens, and they use the same metrics to let the business community know of the economic, the social, and the public health opportunities of expanding solar. And out of it, they got rooftop solar, and they were able to allow there to be some community mix with their local utility company. So we have an EMC. We're membership driven in Forsyth County. I think we can do some of the same things by, as members, opposed to Georgia Power that's shareholder driven. As members, you and I, let's connect offline. We can probably go to Sony EMC and just say, look, here's a plan. What does it take? Where are you at? And how can we make this work? And then we can take that same strategy when COVID ends, go into our schools, go into our churches, go into our community, and build a coalition around that so that we can expand it. The advantage we have is if you elect me to be your public service commissioner, we can help drive that in Forsyth County, and we can make it contagious around the state, which is what I would hope to do.
Awesome. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you. We still have another. Lamont, do you want to ask it, or should I read the one you posted?
Yeah. So I'll read it. The largest solar farm in Georgia is over 1,000 acres, and I was looking at aerial photos today, and it's obviously in an area that's heavily forested, and the forests were cleared to build those farms. And so I'm wondering where you see the balance of keeping carbon sequestering plant life in the ground versus replacing it with solar farms.
I mean, it's interesting because, you know, in my opinion, I think, and I'm being selfish, but I think solar farms is more of a direction I'd like to go in, because I've been working on opportunity zones for the last several years, and going into rural Georgia, I think we have to have the most simple entry points. With me, solar farms makes more sense because I've seen more of a willingness at the county level for these businesses to invest into the infrastructure that will allow that to happen. I mentioned Dalton, Georgia, but even in South Georgia, going towards Columbus, there are counties where we have seen solar pop up because the manufacturing is so attractive to counties that are really just economically hit, and it brings jobs. I mean, Facebook, and I forgot the county, Facebook just came and built a 200,000 square foot facility that's powered by solar right in the state of Georgia. And you know what they did? They went and found out what areas they can actually build solar farms to be able to balance out their manufacturing operation in the state. So I personally would go that route because I've just done more research in it, and I think Georgia farmers and landowners, to the point that was just made by Brad, there are a lot of conservative parts of the state that are, quite frankly, very conservative in rural Georgia. We can go to them and we can actually show the results in North Georgia and in Middle Georgia where these solar opportunities have happened. So I prefer the solar farm route. That's what I would support. We actually have a plan that we'd like to implement within the first 100 to 250 days of my candidacy and being elected. We think that we can already get 6 to 8 counties on board that are just waiting to have that support to make sure the plan is in place so that they understand how to do it. But obviously, we've got to get past COVID, but a lot of counties are ready to get back to work. And I think that's a really easy entry point to make that happen.
Awesome. Well, I may not agree with you on everything, but I donated and I'm definitely voting for you. So thank you.
Thank you. And what I would like to do, if you don't mind, my email is danielblackman@danielforgeorgia.com. Please email me because, you know, I haven't read as much on that other area. I think it's really important for us to understand what that balance looks like. And, you know, like I said, I listen and I work as hard as I can to be better once I'm in that position. So feel free to email me and let's stay in touch.
Awesome. Thank you. And I think we're at our last question in the queue, as long as nothing else pops up last minute, which is Catherine.
Yeah, I'd heard from some of the Georgia folks that you partnered with the kind of Tea Party in Georgia on a particular initiative. So I'd love to hear a little more about that, like that particular issue and just your work kind of bridging political divides.
That is a great question to ask and a great question to end on. In 2010, right at, I would say, the height of some of the challenges of the Obama administration, we all know that the midterm elections in 2010 was very divisive. And the Tea Party Patriot movement, especially in Georgia, was one that grew very rapidly. There's a woman in Georgia named Debbie Dooley, who was the co-founder of the Tea Party Patriots. And Debbie and I agreed on one thing. We said we may disagree on 99% of the issues as it relates to our politics, but the one issue that we did agree on was that Georgia deserved a better future that was not run by utility companies and that gave people what we considered a ratepayer bill of rights. So what I did with Debbie and with other conservatives around the state was I made an economic case for why partisanship was important, right? Bipartisanship was important. We felt at that time in 2013 that the utility companies had this 20-year plan that had no solar in the mix. Even a person that is against climate change understands that if there's an other option that can save them some money and prevent their kids from having some public health ailments, then they would be willing to at least consider it. We knew that because we had seen it work in other rural parts of the country. We just hadn't seen anyone stand up to the utility company in Georgia and say, look, you guys need to pump the brakes and we need to really reconsider renewable energy and what we can do to invest into it. So we worked with the Tea Party, the Sierra Club, civic organizations, Georgia Interfaith Power and Light. We worked with the Democratic Party of Georgia, and we literally built a coalition. We did about 3 or 4 press conferences where we actually proposed what exactly we wanted. One of those main entry points was we wanted a ratepayer bill of rights. We said, look, any project that is going on in Georgia that is an investment made of the utility companies, the cost overrun shouldn't go on the people. When it came to solar, we were able to work with the Sierra Club and the Georgia Conservancy to educate the Tea Party. And again, we didn't agree on like 99% of the issues, but on that one issue, the more we were able to educate them, the more they were willing to say, you know what, I'm going to take a look at it. And we worked with them for about 6 months. And as a result of it, we went from having no solar in the mix to 525 megawatts of solar. And that wouldn't have been done if coalitions didn't stand up to the utility companies. I think there is no way that I can be an effective public service commissioner in Georgia if I'm not willing to work with Republicans. I've already reached out to Republicans around this state, and I've said, look, my name is Daniel Blackman. I'm a Democrat. I'm the Democratic nominee for Public Service Commission. But right now in Georgia, we're being overcharged by our utilities, and we have a nuclear project that's taking money out of your pockets. And if you say you're a fiscal conservative, please help me to understand what we can do to meet somewhere in the middle so that the burden that the utilities are causing doesn't overburden the ratepayer. And that message has been consistent. Have I gotten 100% Republican support? Of course not. But have I had Republicans that deem themselves as fiscal conservatives say, you know what, this guy has a point? And the fact that we're able to point to projects, whether it's coal ash cleanup or nuclear, the nuclear construction, we're able to point and say, look, we want you to look at this for yourself. Next week, I will literally be getting ready for a debate, and I'm going to be meeting with the chairman of a county south of Atlanta. And he said to me, he said, Daniel, I don't know anything about your stance and your platform as it relates to the U.S. Senate. He said, what I do know is you understand the utility industry and you understand the coal ash problem. And my grandkids are drinking the water that's contaminated in this area. And I don't want that to happen. Right. This is the chairman of a local Republican Party that reached out to me and we had a conversation. Now, I don't know if the guy's going to vote for me, but I do know he wants to have a conversation because he knows kilowatt hours and coal ash aren't Democrat or Republican. They impact the community as a whole. So I hope that helps. And Catherine, thank you for your question. Megan, thank you. I know the room was packed and I know we lost some folks, but I'm happy to have answered those questions. This has been extremely fun. And yeah, I'm excited. I feel really good about our chances to not only help Reverend Raphael Warnock and John Ossoff be elected, but I feel really excited about changing the trajectory in Georgia. And I can't do it without you guys. So please contribute, please volunteer, and please tell your friends about me. Daniel Blackman, January 5th. I am in the runoff. Let's win this thing. Rachel, we're going to be in touch. I love your energy. And so thank you guys for your support.
Thank you so much for joining us. This was fantastic.
Thank you.
So much insight. And I'm going to just bring up the slide one more time. Wait, that's not it. I will in 1 second bring up the slide with all the donation links and volunteer links. Did it work? Did I do it right? I don't know. Anyways. I don't think I did it right. But
it's okay.
I will bring it up in a second. I'm not very good at the technology part.
Yenny has put all that information in the chat.
Perfect. And I will put it up on the screen. So once again, please support Daniel Blackman because he's awesome, as we all just learned. And so I guess I don't know, any last thoughts that anybody wants to throw out there? Some thank you, some applause.
Oh no, this was the most what's the word I'm looking for? This was the most comfortable Q&A session I have ever had. So yeah, you guys really outdid yourselves and this was fun. I had an amazing time.
Great. Thank you so much for joining us. I also will I usually cut some of this into little blips of what you said, so you can also share around some of the awesome responses you gave to us here with other people.
Thank you.
And we will share them around as well.
So Megan and Rachel, y'all about to be my new besties. So we're gonna be in touch, and I really mean that. Please convey to those who watched and those who were able to tune in that I want to hear from you. I'm only as strong as my criticism and my encouragement. So you guys call me if I could be doing something better when I get elected. I want you to make sure you call me and say, hey, here's what you said. We got you on record. So, you know, hold me accountable. Don't just help me get into office and then expect me to do everything. You know, I'm going to need the support of the community and of people like you. So thank you all. Good night. And thank you for allowing me to be your guest today.
Thank you so much for joining us again.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Yeah, Paul Glaze is in our Slack. So, you know, looking forward to kind of participating in that the coal ash map conversation. And, you know, just all of that information makes it so easy to have conversations with neighbors.
Yeah. Well, look, Paul Glaze is the man. He's my deputy campaign manager. And Paul and I speak every day, multiple times a day. So look, give him a call, reach out to me. And if you need me to come back before the election, I will most certainly do so. Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you. Have a great night. Thank you. And then I guess right before we cut off our live stream, obviously all of our social media handles for everybody follow. And then our next Sunday Night Live will be December 20th, since we are at bi-weekly now. So just a little reminder for that. Are you ready to end the live stream, Yenny?
Yep, can do.
All right. Goodbye,
Thanks
everybody.
on YouTube.